So about 3 years ago, I did a list of the top 10 worst things I had reviewed up to that point. I'll put a link in the description of that video on my Daily Motion, and if you're wondering why it looks like I filmed it off a TV, that's because I did. It's a long story. Let's just say it involves a new laptop and Zipcast being bad at things. But now I think it's a good time to look over the worst things I've covered since May 2015. So anything post-Alien Origin counts, as long as it wasn't part of a list. So yeah, no Lawrence Southern videos. If they were, they take up like 9 slots. And remember, these are the ones I hate the most. So stuff like Rhapsody Kid, Saving Christmas, Star Trek V, Gigli, even stuff like Prom Night. Well, yeah, they're technically incompetent. I'm not putting them on here because they either made me laugh or they weren't anger-inducing enough. And one last thing, that MacBoy video that I did way back in 2015 is also not going to be on here. 1, I don't want to talk about it, and 2, me and MacBoy kind of buried the hatchet, and I do kind of appreciate that video for getting me out of a very bad place at the time. And once again, I will say at least one nice thing about everything on this list. So let's begin. These are the top 10 worst things I reviewed. Part 2. Number 10. Bigger, Fatter Liar. Some of you may have thought this would be higher, but honestly it was a hard choice between this and Power Failure, but I think number 10 suits it, since it kind of matches the number 10 on my last list, Alpha and Omega 2, in that they both have no reason to exist. No one was asking for this. No one wanted this. No fan of the first movie's gonna like it. And even if you're like a fan of Forever in Your Mind and just wanted to see Ricky Garcia in a movie, do something original, or I don't know, but you don't have to remake a movie from 15 years ago, and that's what it is. It's a remake. I first watched it not long after it came out on Netflix, like halfway through 2017, and at the time I knew it was bad, but rewatching it, it is amazing how much they fucked up. Every single character is unlikable. The 2 leads are thieves, like they should have gone to jail by the end of this. Larry is a one-dimensional cartoon that makes me wonder how he even got the job in the first place. Pennywise is a dunce, the Russian limo driver is a psychopath, and even Highcroft, that boss character, he always just has this annoyed, smug look on his face that made me want to punch him. It's not well made, it's contrived as all hell, and the conflict could have been resolved very quickly if Kevin just typed the damn paper. And the fact that the plot is focused on an app makes it seem like the entire thing will be completely dated in a few years. I will say though, this did make me appreciate the first movie even more. Yeah, it's not perfect, but you know what? They actually made Jason's character work. They had him evolve. They gave him good character development, and they made him just enough of a liar to where he wasn't unlikable. And throughout the movie, we learned more about the movie Big Fat Liar. Whereas this, I don't even get the objective of the game. The actors are trying. I give them credit, and Jodelle Ferland does give a pretty good performance, and her and Ricky Garcia have decent chemistry. Occasionally there's an alright joke, but for the most part, Bigger, Fatter Liar is a complete waste of time.
All you have to do is tell my dad the truth.
The truth? The truth. Highly overrated, kid.
We're dancing like we're done.
Number 9. Pop Star. Now I know what some of you are thinking. Really? This? This is worse than Bigger, Fatter Liar? And yeah, most people probably wouldn't give this a second thought, but it genuinely pissed me off. Every actor is bad. Not a single one gives a good performance. It's just that Aaron Carter makes them all look Oscar-worthy. I know the phrase, Aaron Carter is a terrible actor, should get a resounding no duh. But he is phenomenally bad. Anytime he's not talking, I swear he has this face. In the words of David Gobble,
that's his fucking listening face.
It's also incredibly cheap. I grew up in that golden age of Disney Channel movies from the late 90s through the 2000s. So I saw a lot of them, and every single one of them looks better than this. The editing is awful, the directing is awful, the framing is bad, the lighting is bad. And it'll just have random plot elements that come in out of nowhere, like the kid stealing Jody's stuff for the first half of it. That was a big plot point for like half the movie, and it amounts to nothing. Scenes will just happen. We have like this part where the dad gets his toe pulled because he's an idiot. Random dream sequence. Just one, and I didn't even show this in the review, but at one point, Jane's sister takes JD to her show and tell class. It has no purpose. And scenes just don't flow together. I mean, prom happens after finals, and we never see any other class, but he's supposed to be failing all of his classes, so how did he pass his other finals? And Jane is bipolar as fuck, so much so that we get 2 third-act breakups for the price of 1. For the positives, I mean, the music's good. I mean, not the score, that sucks ass, but the actual songs are fun and catchy. And again, that old couple is just adorable. I wanted to hug them. I actually rewatched this, like, not too long ago, just to see if they answer who that woman was that they were talking to at the end, and I believe it's Jane's older sister. Yeah, she has an older sister who was stood up at her wedding. She appeared once at the very beginning. And you know, after I saw Taking 5, I actually hated this movie more. Yeah, that movie was made just to capitalize on a band's popularity, but you know what? They actually made a movie, which is more than I can say for this. This seems like it should be one of those movies that everyone's talking about. Like, I don't understand why none of the big name reviewers have talked about it. Please send it to everybody. Like, this needs to be a big meme movie. Like, it's that freaking bad.
So what? I'm a pop star.
We're dancing like we're done.
Number 8.
Dum, dum, dum.
I Go Nuclear. This is a lot like Sheep Thrills in that I can't call it objectively the worst episode of iCarly, but it's the one that pissed me off the most. Even above stuff like I Meet Fred, I Date a Bad Boy, and the entire SETI arc. I really hate the teacher who rewards zero effort cliche. Anytime I see that cliche in a fucking movie or TV show or anything, I want to hit something. It promotes laziness and I can't stand it. Mr. Henning seems like he was specifically designed to piss me off. Seeing Sam's smug-ass face after getting an A for basically doing nothing was already enough for me to hate this episode, but it's just not funny. I know not everyone likes iCarly's sense of humor, but you know what? It makes me laugh. I enjoy it. Whatever. But even then, I found 2 jokes that worked in the episode. It isn't even that well structured. I mean, the actual plot with Cal doesn't come in until over halfway through, and you know what? Speaking of Cal, that might be one of the dumbest characters in any Nick-com I've ever seen. He illegally builds nuclear generators in order to make a profit, but just gives one to Carly for free so she can show it off to the entire internet. And he's there in the room when she's showing it off. Yeah, I know he has the disguise, but how are you that stupid? This infuriated me in ways that anger management just didn't. And yeah, that had more problems, but I guess it's the quality over the quantity. And this has barely any good qualities at all.
Behold, the humble orange.
We're dancing like we're done.
Number 7.
Dum, dum, dum.
Chris Stuckman's review of The Amazing Spider-Man 2. This had to be on the list because it was so bad that it brought back Norty Defends. And you know, I do like the Nostalgia Critic and Film Brain and Adam J. They're some of my inspirations, but with their personalities, I get why the reviews that they did that I covered turned out so mean-spirited and just seemed like very hateful things, but Chris Stuckman should not have made a video this bad. Even in his angriest, most pure rage-filled videos, he's usually able to keep his points on track. In this video, he goes on for a minute-long tangent about buying YouTube views. And I know the term nitpicking gets thrown around a lot, but seriously, like a third of this was nitpicking. He's complaining that one of the characters is touching a railing during an action scene. And you know what? I would forgive all of that if he didn't end up giving it a D and basically saying that the people who made it didn't try and were just trying to make a profitable movie. And if you're gonna go that far, you better give me more than nitpicks. And even the stuff that isn't nitpicks makes me wonder if he even saw the movie. He says Gwen is useless by conveniently leaving out all the things Gwen did that didn't revolve around him and Peter's relationship, like finding out who Max was or magnetizing the web shooters. And he took scenes out of context to make them seem dumber than they actually are, which, yeah, in a certain context is fine, but these aren't done for jokes. He's genuinely trying to critique the movie. Look, I'm not saying that The Amazing Spider-Man 2 is perfect, but this whole review feels like a half-assed response to the nostalgia critics' old versus new. It's like, oh yeah, you think Mary Jane's useless? I'm gonna show how useless Gwen is by ignoring everything she does. This is how I imagine he wrote the review. It's how I write most things. I hated this video. Like, I really hated it. And it came out like 2 months after his last Spider-Man review. By that point, Captain America Civil War was no longer relevant, which was the entire point of doing the Spider-Man series. And I say this as someone who enjoyed his analyzed video on Rogue One. I defend Chris Stuckman all the time. He gets a lot of shit for being a pretentious asshole, and I've never thought that. But this video, yeah. He comes off like a pretentious asshole. There are a few funny lines, and it's well edited, and brings up a couple of good points here and there, but for the most part, it just reeks of pretension.
Is the fact that throughout this entire scene, Gwen Stacy is grabbing a metal bar. She's just such a smart character. She has to be there. This is her life, Peter.
We're dancing like we're done.
Number 6. Deconstructed. Yeah, the Wild Grinders pilot, and this is the only thing from 2015 on the list. And as much as I like that review, I do regret that I wasn't able to really convey how much I hated it. This is one of the laziest, cheapest animated things I have ever seen. If I didn't know, I would have just assumed it was a web animation, because the animation is that bad. In fact, it started out as like just shorts that aired on Kabillion. That's where it should have stayed. And for a show that's basic gimmick is to show off skateboarding tricks, the fact that it has bad animation is not good. Everything feels slow, and the cheap flash animation doesn't allow for any creativity. And that's all the show could have going for it, because every character is a stereotype. The cool one, the black one, the nerdy one, the Asian one, the dumb one, and the emo kid who is literally called Emo Cries. And then there's the dog who talks for the first time after like 3 minutes of the episode starting. Their first episode, and that part in the review, like, that was my initial reaction. It genuinely scared the shit out of me. I jumped. The voice acting's terrible. I mean, it basically sounds like a bunch of 30-year-olds trying to play little kids. Because it is. The villain's your generic evil businessman with a bratty kid, and the plot is a mashup of Hey Arnold and Rocket Power, but having none of the charms of those two shows. And how the hell did Rob get out of that cage? I'm not kidding. We never see how he got out. Why have none of the big cartoon reviewers talked about this? I mean, the only one I could find was Phantom Strider, and I'm the one who had to tell him about it. I can't believe that this was released in this decade. And yeah, this decade is crap, but at least shows that are bad from the 2010s, like Teen Titans Go, Pickle and Peanut, all those crappy Nicktoons that they made before finally getting back on track. They at least felt like they were trying to weave into the stuff that works in like the good cartoons, like more adult jokes, more nostalgia for like the 80s and 90s, stuff like that. This feels like a cartoon from the 80s, something that was made by a bunch of adults who don't know what kids like, just trying to sell toys. In terms of positives, it has one funny line. That's it.
And now theme parks?
It's more than a theme park, Sonny. It's progress.
We're dancing like we're done.
Number 5.
Done.
Mr. Wright. One of the worst movies of the decade, and a good choice for number 5 since Wanted was number 5 on my last list, and this is basically the 2010s equivalent to that. It's rare to find a movie in which I hate every single character, but I cannot find one, with the possible exception of the roommate, that is tolerable. Sam Rockwell's a prick. Anna Kendrick is just the worst stereotypes of millennials. Like, I swear, this is like millennial blackface. And well, at least Sam Rockwell does an okay job sometimes. Anna Kendrick is awful. She is terrible. She looks like she's lost. The morality of the thing is just awful. I mean, they're basically saying to just kill people. Like, yeah, sometimes you gotta kill in self-defense, and yeah, bad guys, kill them, but it's the same thing with Wanted. It's like, it's saying just kill because you can. Like, there are movies I love that, yeah, technically do that. Like, look at The Matrix. I mean, they kill a lot of innocent people in that, but they never bring attention to it. This movie, it does bring attention to it, and it just says, fuck it. As an action movie, it's just boring, with no tension because the two leads are invincible. As a romance, the two leads have no chemistry. The villains are absolute idiots. I mean, they completely fail as a threat, and they aren't funny. The plot is a jumbled mess of what could have been like 3 different movies, and it also has some of the biggest tonal jumps I think I've ever seen. The actors are trying. I can't think of anyone who's half-assing it. Most of the problems come from the writing and direction. So, is it worse than Wanted? Well, this movie does take itself a lot less seriously, so it's easier to forgive some of the more dumb moments, but I would say Wanted is a little less annoying, but doesn't matter, they both suck and you shouldn't watch either of them. So screw you, Mr. Wright. See you again in 2020 when I talk about you in my worst movies of the decade.
We were in bed last night.
Oh, no, it's fine. I smelled it. I know, gumbo,
Oh my God.
hot dogs, I get it.
You're such an idiot.
We're dancing like we're done.
Number 4.
Done.
9/11. This movie deserves no more attention than it already got from me. Besides a few decent performances and a good score, there's really not much worth saving here. I think this line sums it up the best.
9/11 was bad.
And that's all I have to say about that.
Mom and Dad, are you guys watching this? Dad, your old building's on fire.
We're dancing like we're done.
Number 3.
Done.
Let sleeper dogs lie. What the fuck? How did this happen? How did this get past the conception phase? I've seen episodes that have bad continuity. I've liked episodes that have bad continuity, but none that have brought attention to it this much. You know that we know that the secret origin of Denzel Crocker exists. So you should know that we would know that none of this adds up. Crocker was not an asshole as a kid. He was a little pretentious, but not much else. I mean, he saved Timmy's dad from a truck. In this episode, I can't imagine Crocker doing anything like that. We know Crocker lost his fairies because he, or rather Timmy, revealed they exist. Yet here, it's apparently because he turned 11, even though we know that Timmy will have them until his teen years. Sparky's there because we have to get him in, even though he wasn't in the original. Cosmo and Wanda forgot about Crocker, not because of, the magical mind erasing thing, but because they just have bad memories. We don't even get an explanation to how Crocker forgot about them. They don't take his memory away from him, so he just forgot. Crocker's mom is short in the video, even though in the last episode she was tall in the past. And when we see Sparky's angle, the one he shot, we don't see Crocker's camera, or even someplace it could reasonably be. And yeah, that might be nitpicking, but you know what isn't nitpicking, and something I didn't notice till months after reviewing this and posting the video? Crocker has video evidence of fairy godparents, and he doesn't show anyone. That's his entire motivation. That's why he does what he does, and he's not showing anyone. This episode shouldn't even exist. You can't tell me that someone, a director, an animator, a writer, a voice actor, didn't speak up and say, hey, this makes no sense. But even if you ignore all of that, the episode on its own still fails. The plot is contrived and dumb. The main joke is people saying the word underpants. The characters are assholes to each other. Even the animation seems a little bit of a downgrade to earlier episodes. There was one joke that got a little bit of a chuckle out of me. It's when the TV just turns on for some reason at the climax, and it's Mrs. Crocker doing her belly dance, and Crocker's like, the love handles, and faints, and it's like, alright, that got a little bit of a chuckle out of me. And again, it's the Fairly Odd Parents, so most of the voice acting is good, except for Sparky. I will probably always hate Foster's Goes to Europe. Out of all the kids are smarter than this reviews I do. But taking my own feelings out of it, this is objectively the worst episode I've reviewed for the series. And looking over the roster at future reviews, I don't see it being topped.
Why do you think I call you Sport all the time? I can't remember your name.
We're dancing like we're done.
Number 2. Valentines Day. This thing is one of the worst things in the history of things. I'm not one for banning certain shows or episodes, but I have to know how the fuck this was allowed on the air. Not just this episode, but the show itself. I'll admit, I've only seen a few episodes, but every single one of them is terrible. Every time I watched them, I had to take frequent breaks. The animation is ugly. The sound design and mixing is terrible. The voice acting, with the exception of the nanny, is bad. And it's just disgusting. It's everything bad about those 90s shows that tried to be Ren and Stimpy and failed miserably. But somehow, Valentine's Day manages to find a way to be worse than the others. Because it has all the same problems. The animation, the sound, just being disgusting, but it's also creepy as fuck. If you need a reminder, this episode is about a boy who looks to be about 8 to 11 years old, falling in love with a baby. A baby. I mean, maybe there's some explanation that she's like immortal and she's actually like, I don't know, freaking 10 or 11 or something, and she just stays a baby forever. But he doesn't know that. He's just in love with a baby. And it doesn't do the normal cartoon thing of having it be some kind of Cupid or a love potion. No, he's genuinely just attracted to a baby. But it's not even a crush. It's basically lust. That scene where he's gawking at her through the window is fucking horrifying. He wants to fuck this baby. The main girl, whose name I don't know, is a complete bitch. I couldn't stand the two little boys. They have villains come in with some of the worst character designs I've ever seen. And in the end, it has the double fuck you of it having not only it be a dream, but it turns out the boy was actually attracted to her. That wasn't part of the dream, no. That actually happened because this episode is incompetent. How do you fuck up this bad? How was this allowed on television? How was this allowed on television for children? This ranks right up there with Rapunzel and Newborn Cuties as one of the worst animated things I've ever seen. The only positive thing I can say is that the nanny's voice acting is fine. This obviously isn't the worst thing I reviewed, but it was probably the hardest to sit through. And it's only 11 minutes long. Fuck this episode, and fuck this show.
Well, snap out of it! She's weakening. We're dancing like we're done.
Number 1. Atlas Shrugged Part 1. This fucking thing rivals Rapunzel for the worst thing I've reviewed. If this movie suddenly got a body, I would punch it in the face. I'm just gonna do the positive shit first so I don't interrupt my bitching about it. You can see it. It's shot okay, like, it had sound and lighting. It could pass as a movie. But with that being said, this is one of the cheapest looking theatrical films I've ever seen. It looks like a TV movie from 1998. It's lifeless. Everything about it is lifeless. The direction is lifeless. The editing is lifeless. The CG is bad. Not one actor gives a good performance. They all look bored and have no expressions on their face. And speaking of bored, this is so padded. It's right up there with Alien Origin as one of the most padded movies I think I've ever seen. And you know what? Say what you will about Alien Origin, but at least that won't get people hurt unless they hang themselves from boredom. This movie is morally reprehensible. Now, I'm not an expert on objectivism, but this movie's interpretation of that philosophy basically says that you should be a selfish asshole. In fact, if this is objectivism, if you're rich and you believe it, you're an asshole. If you're not rich and you believe it, you're a fucking idiot. Our heroes only care about making a profit. They don't care about anyone else's safety or anyone else in general. And they don't like unions because they make sure their workers are safe. But the scene that infuriated me so much is the part where they come across this abandoned warehouse or whatever, a factory, and find that this company basically just created a motor that didn't need, like, oil or anything. It just, like, I believe they said it used the air to create a current or electric current or something. Something like that. Bottom line, they should not have gone out of business if they created that, no matter what. But the reason they went out of business was because they paid their lower skilled workers too much. This movie is basically saying that if you don't have the skills of someone higher, you deserve poverty wages. Because this wasn't a government mandate like minimum wage. This was the company deciding to do this, and they went out of business for it because in this movie's universe, trying to give your workers a livable wage is seen as a bad thing. This movie is evil, and I hear the sequels are even worse, but I guess we'll find out later.
Because it's mine. Do you understand that concept? Mine.
So that's it. And if you're wondering if I just had a revelation that I need to be more positive, why I don't do the top 10 best things I've reviewed, shut up.